You don't speak Southern?
So you were saying?
Cole, help me out here. Ask your question again.
Yeah, the vocal to instrument ratio when you're doing your mixes, I notice. I mean, all of your mixes, the vocals, you get it just right every time. That's the one thing that I struggle with. Either the
Well,
vocals too loud.
I want him to tell you. Be honest, okay? Don't go PC on me. We can't help him if we're not honest. I struggle every mix. It's not a slam dunk. That's where you're supposed to say, "Yeah, Dave, you do."
I thought we're not PC here.
He knows more about how I work than I do because he watches me. I don't have a system, so I just kind of make a record I'd want to go buy. But at some point in the process, and every song's different because some songs I'll start with the vocals first, some songs I'll start with kick drum first, some songs I'll start with the guitars first. And as you're working on the song, it's like a cylinder or a block of marble. So you want to you know that you want it to be a person, and you don't get the eyes perfect at that point. You start knocking off the stuff you don't need to get to the stuff you need. The sculpture is already in the marble. You just got to remove the stuff around it that's not there that you don't need.
Okay.
So when you're mixing, which is different than anything else, there's a large component of the process, about a fourth of the time, is just knocking off marble you don't need. It's just repairing stuff. Sometimes it wasn't recorded so well. Sometimes there's some distortion. You clean that up. And all the time you're learning the song. You're learning the parts. Like we can't mix. Most of my assistants are very successful, except for this one. He hasn't started yet. But we can't mix unless we've memorized everything for the whole song, because if you're going to prepare a meal, I do a lot of food analogies. When you prepare a meal, if you don't know what the ingredients are, you can't add something at the end. You got to know all the ingredients. You got to have them all prepared, and then you start working, right? At some point in the process, the song turns from an instrumental and a vocal to a song. Mm-hmm. So in other words, I'll struggle as I'm working on the song. I try to get my vocal in, at least roughed in, about halfway through the process. I'll set it in because if I set the vocal into the mix too late, I didn't leave any room for it. So now okay. I've got to go repair my own stuff. If I put the vocal in too soon, I don't have a foundation on which I know what it's going to sound like. Now, some of that's experience, some of it's just trial and error, and some of it's a combination of both. So let's say a typical song, like say Single Ladies. When I was working on that, I knew the groove had to be as important as the lyrics and the melody, but the melody had a rhythm to it that I wanted to make sure came through. So on that song, I had a lot of special things to consider. The vocal itself was contributing to the groove, and a great song does that. The vocal in urban music and in pop music, because the drums aren't live and a lot of the instruments aren't live, there can be a linearity to the dynamics. Mm-hmm. Now, when it's done correctly, that lack of dynamics becomes hypnotic. When it's done incorrectly, it just becomes monotonous. So the vocal a lot of times is where you get the energy to make it have that, the chorus and the B sections and stuff pay off. So now I've got the drums pretty solid. I've got one or two of the keyboard tracks roughed in. I got the drums about 80%, and so now I start working on the vocal, and it becomes pretty apparent that this vocal has to compete with a lot of stuff. So what you start doing is taking away the marble you don't need. So you might take a high pass filter to start on the vocal, and maybe start where do I usually start? 180, 100.
150, 180. Yeah.
See, I don't go by numbers. I just
hear it.
Well,
he knows the numbers.
Well, I hear what I want to hear in my head, and then I've been doing this so long, I just come to it and it's done. I don't. It's like driving a straight shift. I don't think about shifting gears and putting the clutch in and taking my foot off the gas. It's just drive. And then at that point in time, now you're beginning the process of you're not taking off big blocks of marble at that time. It's very little tiny things, because if you take off too much marble, you're screwed. And in my world, I have to finish a song a day, so I don't have the luxury of making any.
You'll do a whole song in one day?
No, but I'm supposed to.
Okay.
We recently did an Earth, Wind and Fire Christmas record, and we had to do 12 songs in 5 days or something.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that.
Which I think's the world record for me in the last 5 years. I'm a pretty slow mixer.
But back to the vocal instrument ratio.
It's not a ratio.
Well, it's not a ratio, but
Do you cook?
Very little.
Okay. Do you drink coffee?
Tea.
Do you put sugar in it?
Yes.
That's not a ratio. You put it into it tastes
right.
Great.
There you go. Good point.
So what we're doing, you're having to struggle with some of the things I had to, because I love mathematics, and there's nothing mathematical about the process.
Okay.
So don't think in terms of ratios. Think in terms, and I'm not being forward with you.
No, I understand.
Okay.
That
Or
makes
disrespectful, telling you what to do. But what I do.
You tell me. I'm trying to learn.
Well, you have to personalize everything I say, because he's been with me a year and a half, and I would say he does everything different than I do, technically, but philosophically we're the same.
Well, one of the things that I really appreciate about your philosophy on compression, because I read where, and I agreed with this because I didn't know what I was doing, but I recognized that, a lot of people use the compression and the dynamics in order to level things off so they all kind of stay the same. So but you don't get the feeling and the movement that way. And I think I read you said, you don't use a lot of compression because you want that movement. You don't want it to be too monotonous, as you pointed to earlier.
This might not make sense, but it's really true. I started engineering late in life, in my early 30s. But from about age 13 to about 31, 32, I was playing in bands up and down the East Coast in Florida. And for a minute, I was on staff at Motown from about age 13 to about 17, I think. I toured with a lot of the Motown acts. So almost all my musical sense.
Playing what instrument?
Guitar and bass.
Okay.
And I can play anything, but that's what I played most of them. But my whole musical maturity happened on stages, and I was blessed to play in front of 3 people and 30,000 people, 60,000. And in the South, when I was coming up, you remember Blues Brothers, where they were standing behind the chicken wire? Well, I played those places in Alabama and Montgomery